The editor of the modern magazine was curious if they could publish, but after reading, they couldn't help but laugh at the childishness and sentimentality of the seated. The two argued fiercely, and to prevent Lycaon from giving up her dreams, Kurt encouraged her in his letter to keep creating. Someday, someone will appreciate her talent, but this letter came with a photo that might be missed. However, her reply, carefully written, was left under the table by the maid after mailing, leaving Lycaon anxious with no response. This made her anxious and worried that they might lose contact, so she packed her bags and came up with an excuse saying she had a headache needing treatment. She planned to visit Kurt's city for another meeting. Before departure, she told her sister all secrets. She hoped her sister could use that hidden compartment to help them communicate. Although her sister was shocked and doubtful, she agreed. While riding through a dense forest, Kurt, who was participating in a cycling race, unexpectedly fell off his bike due to a bumpy ride reminiscent of 100 years ago. She was taken to the hospital and fell into a deep coma, seemingly destined, while Lycaon was using her as an excuse. The clinic she booked was in the same place. She planned a quick visit, but unexpectedly ran into. A face she was sure she had never seen yet found familiar caught her eye, and they kept stealing glances at each other. It seemed they both wanted to say something until Lycaon was about to leave, and the man approached politely and gentlemanly. He politely proposed having dinner together, and the perceptive Lycaon sensed that the man in front of her seemed to have the same question. So she agreed. However, as dinner progressed, their glances exchanged tenderness, and it was at this moment that Colonel Dumby's sudden appearance made Lycaon's emotions incredibly complex in an instant. For some reason, every moment spent with this man made her feel closer to Kurt, and they quickly fell in love. With everything developing, it felt so natural and reasonable, but it didn't take long. At the dance party, Dumby suddenly told Lycaon that he would soon return to the front lines. Though she felt a pang of reluctance, Lycaon chose to respect his decision. That night, she rushed to their agreed meeting spot by the flowing river. They locked eyes, sharing no extra words, only smiles and lips slowly inching closer. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Kurt suddenly woke up, as if dreaming of something, but then seemed to forget everything. After being discharged, she immediately opened the hidden compartment and took out the piled-up letters. Kurt learned everything from these letters, including Dumby's appearance. Strangely, she didn't feel sadness or loss. The only thing that concerned her was the battlefield Dumby would soon go to. Based on the timing, it was likely the impending civil war, and after some investigation, Kurt discovered Colonel Dumby would be killed by enemy fire on July 3rd, just a few days from now. This unfortunate news immediately panicked Kurt, realizing she had to prevent the tragedy from occurring. She hurried to the post office only to find it engulfed in flames. She was frantic, realizing she might never see Lycaon again, so in the final moments, she wanted to secure a happy future for her. She bravely dodged the firefighters and risked her life to shove the life-saving letter into the mailbox. Meanwhile, at the train station 100 years ago, Dumby was saying goodbye to Lycaon, promising to return to marry. The setting sun cast its glow on the cold metal of the train, and he waved vigorously but couldn't discern his expression. Lycaon returned home and soon received a letter from Kurt. Upon seeing the contents, she became panicked and hastily drove to the station. However, the chaos of war had erupted, and the previous route had been cut off by rebels. She gave it her all and finally reached the frontline camp, but still arrived too late. Looking at her blooded lover, Lycaon forced a smile and gently stroked his forehead. Those unspoken concerns quietly turned into tears at that moment. On the other side, the sleeping Kurt suddenly woke up, breathing heavily with red-rimmed eyes. An inexplicable sadness struck her heart, and back home, Lycaon had become a shell of herself. Dumby's death made her feel as though she had lost Kurt too, and Kurt was deeply desirous of giving an immediate response to the girl. However, not taking a step meant these letters would forever sink into the sea. Lycaon felt like her heart had turned to ash, and she couldn't help but wonder if all of this was just a dream. Until one day, the maid opened the door and handed her the forgotten letter. When she flipped to the last page and saw a photo that looked exactly like Dumby, she was almost breathless. She wanted to know if these letters were merely a dream. When she saw the photo that looked just like Dumby, Lycaon finally sighed in relief. It turned out that man never left, even 100 years apart. He still accompanied her in a different way. The car stopped again in front of that villa, but unfortunately, the elderly woman had already passed away. Kurt walked into the bedroom alone, softly calling Lycaon's name, the rain outside sounding like whispers from ghosts. In a daze, he felt a mysterious force pulling him to the vanity table. In the past with Lycaon a century ago, he keenly sensed her presence, as if surrounding him. If you enjoyed the story, like and subscribe to our channel.